Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I figured I'd do a kind of first impressions slash review of this new Figuarts Gohan that came out. I've been seeing like loads of videos on this figure and it seems to be a pretty good release so far, so I do want to have a look at it myself. It does seem like there's some problems. That's why I kind of want to record the opening and actually see for myself, like out of box, what this figure is like. Here's the box anyway. Front of the box says Super Saiyan Son Gohan, the fighter who surpassed Goku. Yeah, it's so far looking really good just in the box. Let's see if I can zoom in there a little bit. Look at the side there. Back has some product images. I will say I kind of noticed one thing. It's like the images that they have, the promo shots. It looks like they went with a lighter color for the hair than the actual final product. I'm not sure if that's just lighting, but it looks like they were kind of going for the pale yellow look, but gave up or changed their mind on the actual product. But I do prefer the pale yellow. I wish that was what we actually got, but nothing a bit of paint can't fix. Right, so let's just get the thing open. Quick question for you guys, for you Figuarts collectors. Which side of the box do you open? I always do the right side because the left side has the clear plastic window. And I feel like if you kept opening that, it's going to actually just crease and eventually it will just like tear where the seam is. That being said, people don't really open and close their boxes that much, so it's really up to you, but I'm just curious. So I usually do the right side. And a little tip for yous, if yous are really particular about the condition of your boxes, if you want to open the box and not crease that inner flap, you just grab something flat and rigid like a ruler. So this one's actually the perfect fit for that flap right there. So you just go ahead and put that in, pop it out, and it basically pops the flap out and it doesn't crease it. Now there's no point in me doing this here because my box is a bit done anyway, but I just figured I'd show you anyway. So that's that. So you see there, like usually people will stick their finger in there and it's gonna crease that flap up. But by doing that thing with the ruler, you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, so nothing on the inside. Figuarts usually have the little insert with the instructions behind it, but now they actually just print it on the right side. So maybe it is the way you should open it from now on. But we'll just close that anyway. So here's a look at the tray here. I think one of the biggest things with this release is they introduced cloth goods into the Dragon Ball line. So we're going to see how that cape does. I'm never a huge fan of soft goods myself. I always prefer rubber or some other hard plastic that's well, executed. But we'll see how the soft goods look because they never really replicate plastic with fabric. And, the material difference just is a bit weird to me, but we'll go ahead and get this open. Okay, so tray popped out pretty easily there. So we'll go ahead and just take the figure out first and we'll go over the accessories in a bit. So right out of the box, Gohan's looking really good. I'm just going to do a quick size check here. So let's see. So looking at the height here of a ruler, Gohan's looking like he's about 11 centimeters to the top of where his head would be. And to the top of his hair, then you're looking at around 12 to 12 and a half centimeters. Here's a size comparison with the full power Super Saiyan Goku. So you can see there, they actually have a similar style there for the hair. So I think Figuarts is finally starting to give us more consistent Super Saiyan hairs. The Trunks, Boy from the Future, also looks to have a very similar type of hair. I don't have that figure, but from all the images and videos I've seen, it looks like Bandai is finally starting to give us one type of Super Saiyan hair instead of giving us 16 different finishes. And there's the size comparison between those two. This is actually a really good figure as well. If you guys want me to do a review of this, just let me know in the comments. Now, obviously, I've already opened it, so I already know a lot more about this figure instead of it being my first impressions. But if you want a review of him, just let me know and I'll do one. But yeah, back to the figure. Just another size comparison there with the 2.0 event exclusive Gohan. So this 2.0 is actually slightly taller. Not too sure how to feel about that. I do wish they were the same size. You can also see even the difference there in the size of the hand. So Figuarts was really started to make their small characters small. So I don't think they are limiting themselves anymore to size. So yeah. So first impressions, it looks pretty good. I like the finish of the figure. It's pretty matte. So usually with Figuarts, they'll come out a lot of the times very sort of satin or glossy. This one doesn't seem to be the case. It's actually a really nice matte finish on the skin tone as well. I do have some figures here for comparison. So let's say even the new event exclusive Gohan, you can see there's sort of a bit more of a shine there. The faceplates actually themselves, it's not showing up on camera too great, but you can see there's actually really glossy on the faceplates. But this new Gohan doesn't really seem to be like that at all. I'm just going to go ahead and mess with the articulation a little bit because the biggest concern I have is a lot of people have breakage in the hips because they're way too tight. So we're going to check that, but I'm just going to have a quick look at everything else. So head seems to move freely. Shoulders seem to be fine. Yeah. The wrist ball hinges are also tiny. Like that is scary how small that is. But yeah, it should be okay if you be careful. Yeah, that seems a little bit too tight for comfort even. Got the ball joint at the waist. That seems a little bit tight. I would shock oil that just a little bit. It's actually not too bad. Then it's got the hinge there as well. Okay, here's the moment of truth. I'm just going to be very careful with these legs. That is like you can hear the plastic creak in there. So I'm never a big fan of that. I would just shock wheel that a little bit. So I'll show you guys how I do that. I also not a huge fan of these hip designs because they always have to tuck under now. So the old design, so this is the 2.0 Gohan. So you see the way the hip is, it's actually just flush and it just goes out like that. Very simple. They also didn't do the butt flaps back then. I don't know why they do it now, but basically back then you can do a split kick just like that. It's really simple. Now you've got these big butt cheeks in the back. You can't even put the legs back. They can only go forward. It's really annoying. Yeah. Check the other leg here. This leg is actually fine. Like that doesn't even squeak. That's actually the hip that I've seen most people break. So I'm not sure if I got a like QC, like a rerun or something. Yeah, that's actually fine. That's no worries. Okay, so let's just see if I can tuck that in there. Yeah. So you can tuck it in. Like it is soft plastic, so it's easy enough to tuck under there. Okay, so I mean, quick rundown of the joints. This figure seems fine. My copy. I will say, still be careful. I'd always go through every joint very carefully when I first take the figure out, just to make sure nothing's stuck and nothing's too tight. Because you go in there and you straight up start posing, stuck joint comes in and you're gonna break your figure. So I just had a quick look there and the figure seems fine. I can pose everything just all right. Some joints are a little bit too tight for me. Right, so I think we'll just go into articulation now and just run through all the points that we have. So I'm just gonna have a look here. So just gonna have a quick look here. Head is on a double ball joint. The top one is pretty recessed. The bottom one is actually fairly well placed. So you get good range. It's really easy to move it as well. So Gohan can look all the way down, up, a decent amount. And then, you got your side to side and your full rotation as well. So that's fine. The neck seems to just be on a single ball peg. It doesn't add too much range, but in conjunction with the head joint, you can look all the way down. It just doesn't go back too far. Now that's obviously the hair sculpt as well, so that's fine. But yeah, that's the neck there. The shoulder joint is the same as what Figuarts has been doing now with their 3.0 system. So you can see there's a ball joint there in the chest, and then there's the ball joint here where the arm actually plugs in. So it's like a little cup basically. So it functions pretty much like a butterfly. So you can bring the arm. Let's see, how can I do this here? So you can bring the arm across like that still. It's actually not amazing. I mean, look, without using the butterfly, it's that. So it's actually not a huge difference. I mean, that's without a butterfly. That is with a butterfly. Now, I'm sure if you fiddled around with it more, you could probably get more range out of it. But honestly, for a small figure like this, I think that's acceptable. So we'll go ahead and pop that in there. Now, it's worth noting that the outer gi is a softer rubber, just like the Beast Gohan release. I'm not gonna grab that. I'm too lazy to grab him, but yeah. So if you fiddle around with it, you can probably press that gi in and then get a bit more range out of it. So you do have the hinge here at the shoulder that lets you bring it all the way up past 90. So that's pretty good range there. You get your bicep spool that gives you your full 360. That's just fine. Sculpt is pretty good as well. You have your double bend at the elbow. Great range there as well, and also looks pretty good. And then you have your, I'm just gonna double check here. Yeah, so you have your ball hinge at the wrist. The torso, all right, I'm actually just gonna go ahead and pull this apart on camera just to see. Yeah. That's always a bit scary to do, but it worked out okay. Okay, so what we actually have is we have a ball joint here at the base, but we actually have a hinge inside the torso itself. Then the belt here is the belt a floating piece. The belt is a floating piece, but it's actually glued to the front. I've never seen that on the Figuarts. That's really weird. Yeah, so I'll just put that back on. Now, side note, when you want to actually do the shock oil for the hips, a great way to access that is actually by taking the torso off. So you can drop your shock oil down from above like this. So it's much easier than actually trying to pop the leg off, because you always risk breaking that ball joint if you try to pop that leg off like that. It's actually much better to drop your shock oil in from the top like this, so you never have to pop the leg out. But we'll pop that back on. So with that back on, now we know how the articulation works. It's basically a ball joint that gives you pretty good range, by the way. Oh God, that's a bit worrying. Okay. I think that's back on, yeah, okay. So the waist is on that ball joint there. Really good range. And actually looks pretty good. Obviously, you do get a bit of a gap there. But honestly, depending on the angle, it's fine. Very smooth articulation. Moves forward really well, obviously, because of that hinge. And the belt actually hides that gap pretty well. So you're looking at that in terms of forward range and then back range. You can push it pretty far, but it does get gappy in the front. So that's fine. But overall, I think the waist is pretty good, considering the 2.0 had a mid-section cut like they do with most Figuarts, but the range is basically non-existent there. You actually can't do much. you really can't do much with that ball joint except for that tiny tilt. There's just not enough space for you to move forward and back. And they also didn't put the catapult joint in there, so I actually think I prefer this look with the rubber gi. For a small figure like this, I think that's honestly fine. So onto the hips. I'm not going to move that one. That one is still a little bit tight for me, but if you tuck that in there, you're looking at pretty decent forward range. Bear in mind, the crotch is actually a soft rubber. Not the biggest fan of that because if I keep the figure in one pose, I'm a bit afraid that that rubber is going to warp. But once again, just make sure you tuck that piece under before you move the leg. But with everything in mind, you're looking at a pretty good upwards kick. So bring that down there. Out to the side is also really good. Once again, just make sure you tuck that piece under. But you're looking at almost full splits there. I mean, so I'm really not going to complain about that range. It also looks pretty good. They did sculpt the under sections. So going back, I'm not going to force it much. It's not great because that piece is just clashing. I honestly wouldn't recommend you try it too much. Now, as we saw earlier, our hip swivels are actually ball joints. They've been doing that a lot on their 3.0 releases. My one just popped off there, but I think that was actually just a bit of a fluke. It's actually popped back on now, and it seems to be fine. I'm not going to be using this joint too much, but it is there. Double jointed knees look really good. They look much better than the 2.0s. The 2.0s always have a much smaller cap, but this cap is actually on the entire joint. So it looks like a really good knee bend. The range is also decent. I think they could have gotten a little bit more out of it if they just hollowed the back of this section out a little bit, but that's fine. At the ankles, we have a very good change, which is the ball hinge. Yes, this one actually doesn't seem to be that great because there's not enough of a gap between the cup and where the foot is, so it can't slip under it. This is something that the 3.0 full power did really well. So it's actually a ball joint at the top, but it basically creates enough of a space for the foot to slide in. You see how it does that? So you can get the toe to really point down. Now forwards, mind you, it does still need a bit of work, but I think on the small scale here, they couldn't fit that ball joint in. So I kind of understand it. So that's essentially the range you'll be getting. Not a huge amount. You do have your ankle rocker, just due to the nature of the design. That is excellent always. You also have your toe hinge, just like that. It's actually not too loose, so that one's all right as well. So for a small figure like this, the articulation is honestly really good. There are some joints that are slightly gappy. The range also could be a bit better, and these aren't things like some of the range issues isn't because this figure is small, it's just because of the design choice. So I think I'm gonna knock some points off for that, but everything else is honestly really solid. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the articulation. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take a quick look at the accessories that we have here. So we'll start with the alternate head. So this is actually very easy to swap on. Since it's just a ball joint, it's really easy to pop on. So I think the hair is pretty well finished. Now I do notice that with both of them, they have a bit of shading in the front, but absolutely nothing in the back. Now I will say, when I was talking earlier about the pale yellow that they did on the promo shots, this is actually exactly what I mean. The bare plastic is a lot closer to that pale yellow color I was talking about, but the splash of yellow they put in the front actually just threw me off a little bit. So honestly, if you want the pale yellow look, you could go in there with a bit of rubbing alcohol and try to get that paint off. I don't think it's going to be worth it for me to do it, but that is a choice. Let's just see here. So there's a bit of a color mismatch there between the sideburns and the hair. That's obviously painted, that's not painted, so I can kind of understand. For the most part, this hair is pretty well done. There's a slight gap there, but honestly, that's fine. Pretty good looking hair sculpt otherwise. So next I'm going to show you the face plates that we have real quick. I'm also just going to show you how to change the face plate real quick. So basically you pop off the front of the face, then the faceplate actually slides out with another 2 pegs like that. I do quite like this design because it kind of eliminates the gap a little bit more. Also makes the faceplate much more snug. But basically slide that on and then you pop the entire front on once again. So the next face we have is kind of a half serious look. So he's got the more rounded eyes from kind of when he first came out of the hyperbolic time chamber. Obviously, this is much more of a serious look when his eyebrows are more arched. But this is kind of a more half serious look. Really good printing on this one. Next up, we kind of have a standard among the Dragon Ball line, which is the teeth gritting face. Once again, really well done. The eye shape I also like a lot in particular. I think Figuarts have been getting much better at their face sculpts lately. Last but not least, I think this is a faceplate that a lot of people will be using once Tamashii announces their 3.0 cell, or 2.0 cell, I suppose. But yeah, this is a fantastic faceplate. I mean, you have the battle damage there on the face. Now, granted, there is no battle damage on the body, but I think with this faceplate, you should have some battle damage. Captured the expression very well, and it's a great piece, I think, for the shelf. But I do want to take a look at this cape. So this is a very interesting addition. I'm going to voice my complaints straight away. I'm not a big fan of soft goods, like I said, because the difference in the materials is very noticeable. You can see the plastic is smooth, but then the cape has the fabric texture, obviously. This texture is found nowhere on this figure. So once the cape goes on, it's very obvious in person that it's a different material altogether. Some people might not mind that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that. Also, fabric, once you get it stained, it's almost impossible to clean out. I won't be able to, put this in the washing machine or something like that to clean it. Whereas if I was to get a little speck of paint on my figure accidentally, I could just wipe it off. That being said, I do think the way they have done this is probably the best method if they wanted to do cloth capes. Because a lot of Gohan / Piccolo capes I've seen is essentially all fabric. The top section would be fabric as well. But I think they made a good choice by sculpting this out of plastic because it will hold its shape better and it also looks more accurate. So just having a quick look at the way it's connected as well. It seems to be just glued at the back. So there's a peg there and I'm assuming that the factory just glues that. Now obviously the pro of this fabric soft good cape is the wire that's all around the edge. It makes it so you can basically pose this cape however you want. I'm going to shut up. I'm actually just going to throw it on the figure now. So basically you just pop the head off, put the cape on, and pop that on. So it looks pretty good. I do think he has a little too little of a neck. I do wish it sat just a tad bit lower, but I think that extra material in between the plastic and his shoulder is bumping the whole thing up a little bit. But overall, it looks pretty good, I think. Now, obviously, you can pose it however you wish. So it can look like it's flowing in the wind. But the only problem is if you want to revert it back to a neutral pose, it's never quite going to be perfectly straight again. Then again, I guess you wouldn't need that. So they're trying to fiddle with the cape a little bit. It really seems like the gap there just won't disappear just due to the way the fabric is. So it's a bit unfortunate with that. Now perhaps there is a fix to this, and if I ever do find one, I'll probably make a quick follow-up video to see if I can fix that. But overall, the cape is fine. I think, you know, I'm obviously a bit nitpicky with the material and stuff like that. But if you aren't and you actually do like soft goods, I think you'll really like this cape, actually. I think it's really well done for a soft goods cape. So here's all the hand accessories that we have. I'm just going to show you because they're pretty self-explanatory. So you get a pair that are presumably for Masenko, and then you basically have 3 pairs of splayed open hands that are in slightly different positions. So it's a really good spray. Now I do think they should have included this hand that came with the event exclusive Gohan, and that's the hand with the peg for the Kamehameha. This was actually a new sculpt, so I'm not too sure why they didn't just include it in this figure. But I will go ahead and just check right now and see if that hand is compatible with this figure. So a little bit tough to get on there, but it does go on, and the skin tone also matches pretty well. So you can absolutely use the event exclusive Kamehameha hand with your Gohan. I'm just gonna grab this Kamehameha real quick here and put it on. Yeah. So you can absolutely do your Kamehameha poses using that event exclusive hand right there. So that's pretty cool. Now, obviously, I do wish this hand did come with this Gohan, but it is nice to have that option if you do have the other Gohan. So I'm basically done talking about the figure for the most part. So I just want to do a quick head swap with these two guys here. Obviously, this figure doesn't come with a Super Saiyan 2 head sculpt. I'm anticipating a battle damage Super Saiyan 2 Gohan release with the same engineering as this body. That's going to be an insane figure when that comes out. But for now, we do have a Super Saiyan 2. We do have 2 Super Saiyan 2 Gohans. Obviously, the first release and the event exclusive here. This event exclusive actually does have the original, matte yellow hair sculpt instead of the metallic one. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch this head onto the body and see if it's compatible. So just a quick check here at the ball peg sizes. They actually look about the same. So I think that a head swap should be possible. So go ahead and take the Super Saiyan 2 head sculpt here. So you can see there, even the skin tone, it actually looks like it matches pretty well. So it should just be a simple pop on there. Yep. Now, one thing I will say right off the bat is the neck is definitely way too short with this. But I do think it is possible from certain angles especially. So let's see. I think that honestly could work. Now, obviously, I think you should probably just hold out for Bandai to release their 3.0 Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. But if you really can't wait and you want something on the shelf, this is definitely an option. I have also seen people do it with a, I can't remember what the statue is called, Ichiban Kuso. I should probably put it on the screen there. But that is an option as well. So now the other way around, we can see if this head sculpt fits on this body. So you can see here kind of the opposite problem where the neck is actually a little bit too long now. But I do think this overall looks better than this. This one's neck is definitely way too short. This one is passable to me. But yeah, it's a pretty good look if you do want to. Obviously, you have 2 hair sculpts with this figure. So if you want to keep one on your event exclusive body and the other one on your 3.0, you can absolutely do that. So see if we can pop this other one on this body as well. Yeah, so that absolutely does work as well. So overall, not too bad looking. You can absolutely do it. Now, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of a modification ourselves and put in some shock oil just to make sure this figure doesn't break in the future, because some joints are a little bit too tight for me. Alright, so here we are on the cotton mat just to make sure nothing goes wrong. For the most part, all I'm going to be using is shock oil. Now, there's no real particular brand I recommend. If you go on Amazon, you type in shock oil, you're gonna find it. It's usually used for RC cars, but basically shock oil will not dissolve plastic or do anything like that because I've seen people recommend dish soap, but sometimes dish soap contains solvents that will actually dissolve the plastic on your figures. Not all of them, but some do. So I think it's just much safer to use something like shock oil that is made for scale models. So I have the shock oil here in a needle bottle. I'm not really sure what to call these, but basically this makes for a very easy application into small areas. Just have a bit of kitchen towel there just to catch your excess drips. A few cotton buds as well, just to wipe up extra shock oil. I do feel that waist ball joint is creaking just a little bit too much. So the way you can fix that is by putting a very small amount of shock oil on that ball joint. So I think most of our modifications are going to be happening here because, as I was saying earlier, it's better to put your shock oil in from above like this. So first we're going to go ahead and just apply a little bit on that ball joint and get that fixed up. So what I'm actually going to do is, in this case, I'm just going to dip a bit of shock oil on the cupid, it's on the cotton bud itself. Just a little bit like that. Just gonna dab it on the paper towel here, just a little bit more excess off because you really want a tiny amount. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna rub the cotton bud on the ball peg. The key with loosening figure joints is you wanna go little by little as much as you can because applying too little lubricant is fine. You can always apply more. If you apply too much lubricant, it's really hard to get it off. And I'm actually just gonna do a little bit on the socket as well. So just give that a little turn there. So that is still squeaking, but me turning that, I feel a lot less resistance. I'm actually gonna stop there because I feel like any more it might actually start getting a little too loose. What I'm gonna do here is I'm actually gonna grab a toothpick. I'm gonna just drop a touch of that shock oil there once again on the end of a toothpick. You can see it there. Basically where I'm gonna put the toothpick is right there. It's just like that. So usually it's still gonna squeak, but once you put shock oil into a joint, you actually wanna move the joint back and forth a little bit so the shock oil can fully coat the joint. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just slowly rotating this leg forward and back. So it's already squeaking a lot less there. And now you can hear, once that oil has been fully worked in, very little squeaking. And that joint now is actually very smooth to pose. You can feel the difference. So overall, I must say I'm really impressed with this figure. Coming in, I had my expectations kind of low because of all the QC issues that everybody had. Now, obviously, I didn't really encounter any of those QC issues, and I think if I did, I probably wouldn't have liked this figure as much. But overall, even aside from the QC, I think this figure is really good. The overall articulation and sculpt is quite impressive. Now, I do think there could be a little bit more paint on this, but I think that is a bit of a ask these days with Dragon Ball Figuarts because they haven't really been giving us the same shading as they have with earlier in the line. But I gotta say, overall, for the size of the figure as well, it is quite well engineered for the most part. And I do think it's a good representation of the character. Now, Gohan is my favorite character as well, so there's probably a little bit of bias there. But I think generally speaking, if you're making a Cell Saga display with your Figuarts, this is a really good one to get. I do think it is one of the better releases that have come out lately. I do think Dragon Ball Figuarts are quite hit or miss in terms of design choices, but this one just seems generally quite good. There's nothing that stands out that's too horrible, nothing that stands out that's too amazing, but I do think it's a good figure. So That basically did it for this really long video. I hope you guys did enjoy. I'm probably going to start making more reviews again, and this kind of first impression format I think is a bit easier for me to edit as well. So if you guys enjoyed the video, give me a like, and like I said, if you want me to want to see me review this guy, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to go ahead and do some other figures that I get. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.